I'm Jessica Parker, 34, and I never thought a simple family dinner would unravel my entire existence. My sister Lauren raised her champagne glass and smirked, to finally being the only child when Mom and Dad's Willis Reed. The table froze. My parents exchanged nervous glances as I realized the horrible truth. I wasn't their biological daughter, and apparently, I wasn't in their will. 28 years of family photos on the wall suddenly felt like elaborate props in a play where I was the only one who didn't know her lines. Hey there, viewers! Before I dive deeper into how my world collapsed that night, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Are you team blood isn't everything or team family is family? Drop it in the comments below. And if you enjoy family revenge dramas that'll make your jaw drop, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because trust me, what happened next in this family betrayal saga is something you won't want to miss. Now, let's get back to the moment my perfect family facade came crashing down. The silence that followed Lauren's toast was deafening. My father cleared his throat awkwardly while my mother's eyes filled with tears. I set my glass down carefully, afraid that if I moved too suddenly, the fragile reality I'd known my entire life would shatter completely. What did you mean by that, Lauren? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lauren's expression shifted from smug satisfaction to feigned innocence. Oh, come on, Jess. Don't tell me you didn't know. She looked to our parents. She knows, right? You guys finally told her. My mother reached for my hand across the table. Jessica, honey, we were going to tell you after dinner. We've been trying to find the right time. Tell me what? I interrupted, pulling my hand away. Deep down, I already knew the answer, but I needed to hear them say it. You're adopted, my father said flatly. We adopted you when you were 6. We were going to tell you when you were older, but then it just never seemed like the right time. 28 years. They'd kept this secret from me for 28 years. Memories flashed through my mind, childhood birthdays, high school graduation, my college acceptance letter, all milestones celebrated with people who had been lying to me my entire life. And the will? I asked, remembering Lauren's toast. Is that true too? My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. We've set up a small trust for you, my father explained, his voice businesslike, as if we were discussing a minor work issue. But the bulk of our estate will go to Lauren. She's our blood and I'm not, I finished for him. Lauren had the audacity to look sympathetic. It's nothing personal, Jess. It's just how things work. Blood is thicker than water and all that. I felt as though I was floating outside my body, watching this scene unfold from above. The Parker family home, with its perfectly arranged furniture and carefully curated family photos, suddenly felt like an elaborate set designed to fool me. How long have you known? I asked Lauren. Since I was 12, she replied casually. Mom and Dad swore me to secrecy. They thought it would be easier if you didn't know. Easier for whom, I wondered. Certainly not for me. My entire identity had been a carefully constructed lie, and the people I trusted most had been its architects. Do I have other family? I asked, my voice breaking. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Your biological parents weren't in a position to raise you. Your mother was very young, and your father wasn't in the picture. But there was a family, my father added reluctantly. The Reyes family. They took care of you for a while before we adopted you. Your biological mother's cousin and her husband. The name struck a chord deep within me. Reyes. It sounded vaguely familiar, like a half-remembered dream. Had I been suppressing memories all these years? Or had the Parkers been so effective at erasing my past that even my own memories had been rewritten? Why no? I asked. After all these years, why tell me now? We're updating our will, my father explained. Our lawyer advised us that you should be informed of your status before the new documents are finalized. Not because I deserve to know. Not because it was the right thing to do. But because of legal technicalities. My entire world had been appended due to paperwork. I need some air, I said, standing up so abruptly that my chair toppled backward. Jessica, please, my mother began, but I was already halfway to the door. Outside, the cool evening air did nothing to clear my head. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from my boyfriend, Ryan, asking how the dinner was going. How could I possibly explain this? Great dinner. Just found out I'm adopted and my family doesn't consider me real family. How was your day? Instead of responding, I found myself searching online for Reyes family and my hometown. It was a common Hispanic surname, but there was only one Reyes family in our small Connecticut town during the time period when I would have been with them. Manuel and Elena Reyes. They had operated a small neighborhood bakery until about 20 years ago, when they apparently relocated to Philadelphia. As I stood on my parents', no, the Parkers' perfectly manicured lawn, I made a decision. I needed to know the truth. All of it. And I wouldn't get it from the people who had been lying to me for nearly 3 decades. The following morning, I called in sick to my job at the architectural firm where I'd worked for the past 7 years. I couldn't face reviewing building plans and approving permits while my personal foundation was crumbling beneath me. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, a cold cup of coffee beside me, and began my search for the truth. The Reyes family had left very little digital footprint. Their bakery, Reyes Family Bakery, had closed in 2004, and the only mentions I could find online were a few nostalgic comments in a community forum about businesses people missed from the old neighborhood. Nothing beat Elena Reyes' cinnamon rolls on a Sunday morning, one comment read. That family put their heart into everything they baked. Family. The word stung in a way it never had before. What kind of family had the Reyes been? Had they wanted to keep me? Did they ever think about the little girl they had taken care of before the Parkers came along? My phone rang, Lauren calling. I silenced it and continued my search. After several hours of digital dead ends, I realized I needed to take a more direct approach. I called the town hall in my hometown and asked about adoption records. Those would be sealed, the clerk informed me. You'd need a court order to access them. What about property records? For a business that operated in the early 90s, this was more promising. The clerk directed me to their online database of business licenses and property records, which had been digitized a few years earlier. By late afternoon, I had a partial address for the Reyes Bakery, 217 Maple Street. The building had since been converted into a cell phone store, but it was a start. I also discovered that Manuel and Elena Reyes had indeed moved to Philadelphia in 2004, though I couldn't find a current address. My doorbell rang, startling me out of my research fugue. It was Ryan, looking concerned. Your mom called me, he said as he stepped inside. She said you left dinner upset last night and aren't returning anyone's calls. What happened? I laughed bitterly. My mom. That's rich. I told him everything, the dinner, Lauren's toast, the revelation about my adoption, and the will. Jesus, Jess, Ryan said when I finished. I don't even know what to say. Why would they keep this from you for so long? Apparently they thought it would be easier, I replied, making air quotes. Easier to pretend I was their real daughter while secretly planning to cut me out of their will. Ryan pulled me into a hug. You know this doesn't change who you are, right? You're still the same Jessica. But that was the problem. I wasn't the same Jessica. The Jessica I'd been until yesterday was Jessica Parker, beloved daughter of David and Margaret Parker, sister to Lauren Parker. That Jessica had a clear understanding of her place in the world, her history, her family. That Jessica no longer existed. I need to find the Reyes family, I told Ryan, pulling away from the hug. They took care of me before the Parkers adopted me. They might be able to tell me about my biological parents, or at least help me understand where I came from. Ryan looked skeptical. After all this time? And what if they don't want to be found? Or what if they don't remember you? They'll remember, I said with a certainty I couldn't explain. And I need to find them. My phone buzzed again, a text from my father this time. Your mother is very upset. Please call us so we can explain properly. I showed the message to Ryan. Explain properly, I repeated. As if there's a proper way to explain lying to your child for their entire life. Maybe you should hear them out, Ryan suggested cautiously. Not for their sake, but for yours. You deserve the full story, and they might have information that could help you find the Reyes family. He was right, of course. As angry as I was with the Parkers, they were still the most direct link to my past. I needed to set aside my feelings long enough to get the information I needed. I'll meet with them, I agreed reluctantly. But not at their house. Somewhere neutral. I texted my father back, coffee tomorrow. 10 a.m. The cafe on 5th Street. Just you and Mom. No Lauren. His reply came quickly, "We'll be there." Thank you, Jessica. Ryan stayed the night, holding me as I alternated between angry tears and periods of numb silence. In the morning, he offered to come with me to meet the Parkers, but I declined. This was something I needed to do alone. The cafe was busy when I arrived, which was exactly what I wanted. The background noise of espresso machines and quiet conversations would provide some cover for what was sure to be an emotional discussion. I spotted the Parkers already seated at a table in the corner, both looking as though they hadn't slept well. Good, I thought uncharitably. They deserved a sleepless night or two after what they'd done. I ordered a black coffee at the counter before joining them, needing the extra minute to compose myself. Then, coffee in hand, I walked to their table and sat down without a greeting. Jessica, my mother, Margaret, began, her eyes red-rimmed. We are so sorry for how this all came out. We never wanted you to find out this way. How did you want me to find out? I asked coldly. Or did you hope I never would? The coffee shop buzzed with morning activity around us, a stark contrast to the heavy silence at our table. Margaret Parker, I couldn't bring myself to think of her as Mom anymore, reached for my hand across the table, but I kept my hands firmly wrapped around my coffee cup. Jessica, please understand, she began, her voice trembling slightly. We always meant to tell you when the time was right. The time was right 28 years ago, I replied flatly. Or 20 years ago. Or 10. Instead, you let me find out because Lauren wanted to gloat about being the only one in your will. David Parker shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Lauren shouldn't have said that. It was inappropriate and hurtful. But true, I said. That's the part that matters, isn't it? It's true that you don't consider me your real daughter. Not when it counts. That's not fair, Margaret protested. We raised you, loved you. While lying to me every single day, I interrupted. And now you're planning to leave everything to Lauren because she's your real daughter. How is that love? David cleared his throat. The will is complicated. There are tax considerations, family heirlooms that have been in the Parker line for generations. I laughed bitterly. Don't insult me by pretending this is about taxes or heirlooms. This is about blood, plain and simple. Lauren made that very clear. They exchanged glances, and I could see the truth in their eyes. Despite raising me since I was 6 years old, despite all the birthday parties and graduations and family vacations, I had never truly been a Parker to them. I had been a charity case, a good deed, perhaps even a beloved pet, but never truly their daughter. I need information, I said, deciding to cut to the chase. About my adoption. About the Reyes family. About my biological parents. Margaret looked surprised. You remember the Reyes family? No, I admitted. Dad mentioned them last night. I want to know everything. Where they are now, how to contact them, why they didn't keep me. David sighed heavily. The Reyes were your biological mother's cousins. Elena was related to Maria, your birth mother. Maria, I repeated, testing the name on my tongue. And my father. We never met him, Margaret said. Maria was very young when she had you, just 17. The father wasn't in the picture. And where's Maria now? Another uncomfortable exchange of glances. We don't know, David admitted. The adoption was closed, at her request. She was trying to get her life back on track, go to college. The last we heard, through Elena, was that she had moved to California. And the Reyes family? Why didn't they keep me? They wanted to, Margaret said softly. Very much. But they were struggling financially. The bakery was just getting started, and they had 3 children of their own. They were your temporary guardians while the adoption was being arranged. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. The Reyes had wanted me. They hadn't given me up willingly. You told me I was unwanted, I said, memories suddenly flooding back. When I was 8 and asked why I didn't look like you or Dad or Lauren, you said my real parents didn't want me, but you did. You made it sound like you rescued me from neglect or abandonment. Margaret had the grace to look ashamed. We thought it would be easier for you to bond with us if you believed that. We were afraid you'd pine for a family that couldn't keep you. So instead you lied and made me believe my biological family abandoned me. I was nearly shouting now, drawing concerned glances from nearby tables. I lowered my voice with effort. Where are the Reyes now? I need their contact information. Last we heard, they were in Philadelphia, David said. But that was years ago. We lost touch after the adoption was finalized. You mean you deliberately cut ties with them, I guessed, seeing the truth written on their faces. It seemed cleaner that way, David admitted. A fresh start for everyone. For you, maybe, I retorted. Not for me. Not for them. I pulled out a notebook and pen from my bag. Write down everything you remember about them. Full names, last known address, names of their children, anything that might help me find them. Jessica, is this really necessary? Margaret asked. After all this time. Yes, I interrupted firmly. It is necessary. For me. You owe me this much at least. Reluctantly, they provided what information they could. Manuel and Elena Reyes. Their children, Miguel, Carmen, and Antonio, who would be in their late 30s or early 40s now. The name of their bakery in Philadelphia, Reyes Family Bakery, the same as it had been in Connecticut. Not very creative, but at least it would be easier to track down. There's something else you should know, David said as I was preparing to leave. About your sister. Lauren is not my sister, I corrected coldly. About Lauren, he amended. She's the one who convinced us it was time to tell you the truth. Not because of the will, but because she thought you deserved to know. That toast, that wasn't planned. She'd had too much to drink, and she's always had a mean streak when she drinks. I wasn't sure whether to believe him. It seemed too convenient, absolving them of responsibility by blaming Lauren's cruelty. But then again, it did sound like Lauren impulsive, slightly mean-spirited Lauren, who had always enjoyed having the upper hand. That doesn't excuse 28 years of lies, I said, standing up. Or cutting me out of your will in favor of your real daughter. Jessica, please, Margaret began, tears streaming down her face. We're still your parents. We still love you. I looked at the woman who had packed my lunches and kissed my scraped knees and helped me with my homework. The woman who had also systematically lied to me for my entire life, who had made me believe I was a Parker when it suited her, but not when it really counted. No, I said finally. You're not my parents. You're the people who raised me. There's a difference, and you're the ones who made sure of that. I walked out of the cafe without looking back, clutching the information about the Reyes family like a lifeline. For the first time in my life, I felt like I might be walking toward the truth rather than away from it. 2 days later, I was on a train to Philadelphia with nothing but a weekend bag and the scribbled notes from David and Margaret. Ryan had offered to come with me, but this was something I needed to do alone. Besides, I had no idea what I would find in Philadelphia, or if I would find anything at all. The city welcomed me with a blast of hot, humid air as I stepped off the train at 30th Street Station. I checked into a modest hotel downtown and immediately started my search. According to my notes, the Reyes Family Bakery had opened in Philadelphia sometime in 2004 or 2005, but there was no guarantee it was still in operation nearly 20 years later. A quick internet search revealed that, surprisingly, the bakery did still exist, though it had moved locations twice since its opening. It now operated out of a small storefront in South Philly, with moderate reviews that praised their authentic Mexican pastries and breads. I stared at the address on my phone, suddenly hesitant. What was I hoping to accomplish here? What would I say to these people who had briefly been my caretakers 3 decades ago? Hi, remember me? The little girl you couldn't afford to keep. But I'd come too far to turn back now. I hailed a cab and gave the driver the address, watching the city pass by in a blur of summer heat and urban bustle. The bakery was located on a busy corner in a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood, its windows displaying an array of colorful pastries and a hand-painted sign that read Reyes Family Bakery, EST 1995 in both English and Spanish. My heart pounded as I pushed open the door, a little bell announcing my arrival. The interior was small but immaculate, with glass cases displaying pan dulce, conchas, and other pastries I couldn't name. Behind the counter stood an older woman with salt and pepper hair pulled back in a neat bun, her brown face creased with laugh lines. She was chatting in Spanish with an elderly customer, her hands moving expressively as she packaged several pastries. Could this be Elena Reyes? The woman who had once cared for me as a small child? I waited until the customer had paid and left, then approached the counter hesitantly. "Hello," I said, my mouth suddenly dry. "Are you Elena Reyes?" The woman smiled warmly. "Yes, I am. What can I get for you today? The conchas are very fresh. Just came out of the oven an hour ago." Her English was accented but perfect, her manner friendly but professional. There was no flicker of recognition in her eyes, but why would there be? I'd been a small child when she last saw me, and now I was a grown woman of 34. "Actually," I began, my voice shaking slightly, "I'm not here for pastries. My name is Jessica Parker. I believe you knew me, a long time ago. When I was very young." Elena's smile faltered, confusion crossing her face. "Jessica." She studied my face intently, and then her eyes widened in shock. "Dios mío," she whispered. "Little Jessie? Maria's daughter?" I nodded, tears suddenly blurring my vision. "Yes, that's me." Elena came around the counter with surprising speed for a woman her age and pulled me into a tight hug that smelled of cinnamon and vanilla. "Jessie, mi Nina," she murmured into my hair. "After all these years. We never thought we would see you again." I hugged her back, overwhelmed by the genuine emotion in her embrace. When we finally separated, Elena was wiping tears from her eyes. "Manuel," she called toward the back of the shop. "Manuel, ven aquí. You won't believe who is here." A man emerged from what must have been the kitchen, flour dusting his apron and gray hair. He was tall and broad-shouldered despite his age, with the same kind eyes as Elena. "What is it, mi amor?" he asked, then stopped short when he saw me. "It's Jessie," Elena said, her voice full of wonder. "Maria's Jessie." Manuel's weathered face broke into an astonished smile. "Jessie? Is it really you?" Before I could answer, he too was hugging me, his embrace even tighter than Elena's had been. When he pulled back, he cupped my face in his large hands, examining me as if I were a precious artifact. "You look so much like your mother," he said softly. "The same eyes." "My mother," I repeated. "Maria. That's partly why I'm here. I just found out I was adopted. The Parkers never told me, all these years. I didn't know about you, or about Maria, or any of it until 2 days ago." Elena's expression darkened. "They never told you? But they promised they would when you were old enough to understand." "Well, they didn't," I said bitterly. "I found out because their biological daughter, my sister, made a toast about being the only child when their will is read." Manuel muttered something in Spanish that sounded like a curse. "Come," he said, taking my arm gently. "This is not a conversation for the shop floor. Elena, can you watch the front? I will take Jessie upstairs." Elena nodded. "Of course. I'll join you when Lucia arrives for her shift in 20 minutes." Manuel led me through the kitchen, where 2 younger people, probably in their 20s, were working at various stations, and up a narrow staircase to what appeared to be a small apartment above the bakery. It was modestly furnished but homey, with family photos covering nearly every available surface. Sit, Manuel urged, gesturing to a comfortable-looking sofa. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee? Something stronger, perhaps?" "Water would be great," I said, suddenly aware of how thirsty I was. As Manuel busied himself in the kitchen area, I examined the photos on a nearby side table. Many featured a younger Elena and Manuel with 3 children of varying ages. In one particularly striking photo, a teenage girl held a baby, looking down at the infant with an expression of pure love. Manuel returned with 2 glasses of water and noticed me studying the photo. "That is Carmen, our daughter, holding you," he said softly. "She was 15 when you came to us. She adored you from the first moment." I nearly dropped the frame. "That's me." Manuel nodded. "You lived with us for almost 8 months before the adoption was finalized. From when you were about 5.5 until just after your 6th birthday. I stared at the photo, trying to reconcile the smiling baby with my own sense of self. I had no memories of this time, of these people who were looking at the infant me with such obvious affection. "Why didn't you keep me?" I asked, the question coming out more bluntly than I'd intended. "The Parkers said you wanted to." Manuel sighed heavily and sat beside me on the sofa. "We did want to. Very much. Elena and I discussed adopting you officially many times. But our situation was difficult. The bakery in Connecticut was struggling. We had 3 children of our own to feed and clothe, and the legal costs of adoption were beyond what we could afford at that time. So it was about money, I said, feeling a strange mixture of disappointment and relief. Partly, Manuel admitted. But it was also about what we thought was best for you. The Parkers could give you opportunities we couldn't, the best schools, college without debt security. They seemed like good people who genuinely wanted a child. His expression darkened. They promised to tell you about us, about your mother. They promised you would know your history. Well, they lied, I said simply. About everything. Elena joined us then, having been relieved at the counter downstairs. She sat on my other side and took my hand in hers. Tell me everything, Nina, she said gently. How did you find us after all these years? I recounted the disastrous family dinner, Lauren's cruel toast, and my subsequent discovery of my adoption. I told them about confronting the Parkers and demanding information about the Reyes family. By the time I finished, Elena was crying softly, and Manuel's face was a mask of controlled anger. Those people, Elena said, shaking her head. To keep a child from knowing her own history, her own family. It's cruel. We should have checked on you, Manuel added, regret heavy in his voice. We should not have trusted their promises so easily. But they made it clear that a clean break would be best for everyone, especially you. What about my mother? I asked. Maria. Where is she now? Is she still alive? Elena and Manuel exchanged glances. Maria is alive, Elena said carefully. But her life has not been easy. After giving you up, she struggled with depression and then with addiction. There were many dark years. Where is she now? I pressed. She lives in Arizona, Manuel said. In Tucson. She has been sober for 12 years now and works as a counselor at a rehabilitation center. We speak to her a few times a year. She asks about you, though she knows we have no information to give. She asks about me. I repeated, a strange feeling blossoming in my chest. She remembers me. Elena's eyes softened. Oh, Jessie. A mother never forgets her child. Maria was very young when she had you, too young, with no support from your father or her own parents. But she loved you very much. The decision to give you up was the hardest thing she ever did. Does she know I'm here? That I found you? No, Manuel said. But we can call her if you wish. Or give you her contact information. I nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the prospect of speaking to my biological mother for the first time in my adult life. I'd like her number, please. I need some time to process all this before I call her. As Manuel went to fetch Maria's contact information, I noticed something that had escaped my attention earlier, a small shrine-like area in one corner of the room, with candles and several photos arranged carefully. One photo in particular caught my eye, a much-enlarged copy of the same image of Carmen holding me as a baby. You kept my picture, I said, gesturing toward the shrine. All these years. Elena followed my gaze and smiled sadly. Of course we did. You were part of our family, even if only for a short time. We never forgot you, Jessie. We prayed for you every day, hoping you were happy and loved. I felt a lump forming in my throat. I was loved, I admitted. Whatever else the Parkers did wrong, they did love me. I never doubted that until recently. That is something, at least, Elena said, squeezing my hand. But love without honesty, it is incomplete, no? Like a beautiful cake that looks perfect but is raw in the middle. I laughed despite myself at the baking metaphor. I guess that's true. Manuel returned with a slip of paper bearing a phone number. Maria's number, he said, handing it to me. And her address, if you prefer to write to her first. Thank you, I said, carefully tucking the paper into my wallet. For this, and for wanting me. Even if it couldn't work out. Stay for dinner, Elena urged. Meet our children, your cousins, technically. Carmen and Antonio still live in Philadelphia with their families. Miguel is in New York, but he visits often. They would be so happy to see you. I hesitated, suddenly aware of how overwhelmed I already felt. Maybe tomorrow? I need some time to process everything. But I'd love to come back and meet everyone. Of course, Manuel said quickly. We have waited 30 years. We can wait one more day. Come tomorrow at 4. The bakery closes early on Sundays, and everyone will be here for our family dinner. Your family dinner now too, if you want it to be. As I stood to leave, Elena pressed a small paper bag into my hands. Conscious, she explained. Your favorite when you were little. You would cry if we ran out. I thanked her, oddly touched by this small connection to my forgotten past. As I headed back to my hotel, clutching the bag of pastries and the precious slip of paper with Maria's contact information, I felt as though I were walking in a dream. Just 3 days ago, I had been Jessica Parker, adopted daughter of the Parker family, but blissfully unaware of that fact. Now I was Jessica, biological daughter of Maria, once ward of the Reyes family, and biological niece to Elena. It was overwhelming, but also strangely freeing. For the first time in my life, I felt as though I was getting closer to the truth of who I really was. I'm going to pause here for a moment because what happened next completely changed the course of my life, and I still get emotional thinking about it. If you're enjoying this journey with me, please hit that like button to let me know. And don't worry, I'm about to reveal how this all connects to the $50,000 mentioned in the title. Are you Team Parker or Team Reyes at this point? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you want more stories like this one. Now, let's continue with what happened when I returned to my hotel. Back in my hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the slip of paper with Maria's contact information. My biological mother was just a phone call away. After 34 years of not knowing she existed, or rather, knowing but believing she had abandoned me, I could speak to her right now if I wanted to. But something held me back. Fear, perhaps. Or the need to process everything I'd learned from the Reyes family first. I set the paper on the nightstand and instead reached for the bag of conscious Elena had given me. The sweetbread was delicious, with a perfect balance of cinnamon and sugar in the crisp topping. As I ate, I wondered if some deep, cellular memory recognized this taste from my forgotten early childhood. Had these pastries been a comfort to me during those 8 months with the Reyes family? Had Maria fed them to me before that? My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. How's it going? Find anything? I started typing a response, then realized there was too much to explain via text. I called him instead. Hey, he answered immediately. I've been thinking about you all day. Did you find them? I found them, I confirmed, then proceeded to tell him everything about the bakery, about Elena and Manuel, about the revelation that I had lived with them for 8 months, and the discovery that my biological mother was alive and living in Arizona. Wow, Ryan said when I finished. That's a lot to take in. How are you feeling? Overwhelmed, I admitted. But also, I don't know. Like I found a piece of myself that was missing. The Reyes are so warm, Ryan. They kept my picture all these years. They prayed for me every day. And they wanted to keep me. They just couldn't afford to. Are you going to call your biological mom? I sighed. I don't know. Maybe tomorrow, after I've had some time to process. I'm having dinner with the Reyes family tomorrow evening. They want me to meet their children, my cousins, I guess. That's amazing, Jess. I'm so happy you found them. He paused. Have you heard from the Parkers? The question brought me back to reality with a jolt. No. And I don't want to. Not yet, anyway. Another thought occurred to me. Actually, can you do me a favor? Can you go to my apartment and check my mail? I'm expecting something important. Sure, no problem. What am I looking for? An envelope from Hargrove and Associates. It's the quarterly distribution from my trust fund. My trust fund was the one financial tie I still had to my grandparents, Margaret's parents, who had set it up for both Lauren and me when we were born. Well, when Lauren was born and when I was adopted. I had been using the quarterly distributions to pay off my student loans, which were nearly cleared. This quarter's distribution would be the last one I'd need for that purpose. Will do, Ryan promised. And Jess? I'm proud of you for doing this. For finding the truth. After we hung up, I found myself restless and unable to sleep. I opened my laptop and began researching adoption laws, birth records, and the rights of adoptees. The more I read, the angrier I became. In many states, including Connecticut where my adoption had taken place, original birth certificates were sealed and unavailable to adoptees without a court order. The system seemed designed to erase identities and histories, to pretend that adoption was a clean break rather than a complex continuation. By morning, my anger had crystallized into resolve. I wasn't just going to reconnect with my biological family, I was going to reclaim my full identity, all of it, including the parts the Parkers had tried to erase. I spent the morning exploring Philadelphia, trying to clear my head before the evening's family dinner with the Reyes. Around noon, Ryan called. "Hey, I got your mail." The envelope from Hargrove came. "Great. How much is it?" The quarterly distributions varied slightly based on investment returns. $50,000, Ryan said. "Is that normal?" Seemed high to me. I nearly dropped my phone. 50,000? That can't be right. It's usually around 5,000. Well, there's a letter with it. Want me to read it to you? Please, I said, finding a bench to sit on as my legs suddenly felt weak. Ryan cleared his throat. "Dear Ms. Parker, please find enclosed your final distribution from the Parker Family Trust, as instructed by the trustees. This amount represents the remainder of your portion of the trust, which is now considered fully distributed. For any questions, please contact our office. Sincerely, William Hargrove." Final distribution. I repeated. "They're closing my trust? They can't do that without my signature." "Actually," Ryan said hesitantly, "there's a copy of your signature here. On a document titled Acknowledgement of Final Distribution." "But Jess, this doesn't look like your handwriting." "Because it's not," I said, fury building inside me. "Lauren must have forged it. She works in the family business. She has access to all the paperwork." "That's illegal," Ryan pointed out. "You could report this." I agreed. "But I have a better idea." After my call with Ryan, I sat in a small park, watching children play on a carousel while I considered my options. The Parkers, or more specifically Lauren, had effectively cut me out of the family trust early. The final distribution was clearly meant to be a severance payment, a way of financially disconnecting me from the Parker family now that I knew the truth about my adoption. My first instinct was anger, then hurt. But as I watched the children on the carousel, rising and falling in their perpetual circle, I realized something important. I had a choice about how to respond. I could fight, hire a lawyer, contest the forged signature, demand my rightful place in the Parker Family Trust. Or I could accept the money and use it to forge a new path forward, one that acknowledged all parts of my identity. By the time I arrived at the Reyes family bakery for dinner that evening, I had made my decision. The bakery was closed to customers, but the lights were on and I could see movement inside. I knocked on the glass door, and Elena appeared immediately, waving me in with a warm smile. "Jessie, come in, come in. Everyone is upstairs, so excited to meet you." The small apartment above the bakery had been transformed. The dining table was extended to its full length and covered with a colorful tablecloth. Delicious smells wafted from the kitchen area, and the room was filled with people of various ages, all talking animatedly in a mix of English and Spanish. Elena led me into this cheerful chaos, clapping her hands for attention. "Everyone, this is Jessie, Maria's daughter." The room fell silent as every face turned toward me. Then, a middle-aged woman stepped forward, her eyes wide with emotion. "Jessie," she said softly. "I'm Carmen. I used to hold you when you were a baby. You would only fall asleep if I sang to you." This was the teenager from the photograph, now a woman in her late 40s. Before I could respond, she pulled me into a tight hug, and suddenly I was being passed from person to person, hugged and kissed, and welcomed by people who seemed genuinely thrilled to see me. Carmen's husband, Javier. Their children, Elena Jr., named after her grandmother, and Marco. Antonio, the youngest Reyes sibling, and his wife Patricia with their teenage twins, Sofia and Luis. Even Miguel, the oldest Reyes child, had driven down from New York with his partner, David, specifically to meet me after Elena called with the news of my visit. It was overwhelming in the best possible way. These people, who were technically strangers, treated me like a long-lost family member finally returned home. which I supposed was exactly what I was. Throughout the evening, stories flowed as freely as the wine. Stories about my time with the Reyes family as a baby, how I would giggle uncontrollably when Manuel pretended to eat my toes, how I would sit in a high chair in the bakery and charm the customers, how Carmen had cried for days after I was taken to live with the Parkers. We tried to stay in touch, Elena explained as she served a magnificent paella. We sent birthday cards, Christmas gifts. But after a few years, they were returned unopened. The Parkers said a clean break would be best for you, that you were adjusting well and shouldn't be confused. They had no right to make that decision, Carmen said fiercely. You deserve to know your history, your family. My real family, I said quietly, looking around the table at these people who had loved me unconditionally, even from a distance, for my entire life. Not just the family that raised me. Later, as dessert was being served, a flan made from Elena's mother's recipe. I cleared my throat nervously. I have something I want to share with all of you, I began. As you know, I just found out about my adoption a few days ago. The way I found out was painful. My sister, Lauren, made a toast about being the only child when our parents' will is read. Sounds of disapproval rippled around the table. What I didn't know until today was that the Parkers, or at least Lauren, have already taken steps to cut me out financially. My trust fund has been closed, with a final payment of $50,000. That's terrible, Miguel said, shaking his head. Have you spoken to a lawyer? That sounds illegal. It probably is, I agreed. But I've decided not to fight it. In fact, I've made a decision about that money that I wanted to share with you. I took a deep breath, suddenly nervous. The Reyes family took me in when I had nowhere else to go. You loved me and cared for me, and the only reason you couldn't keep me was financial. So I've decided that the $50,000 from the Parker Trust will go to the Reyes family. Stunned silence greeted my announcement. Jesse, no, Manuel said firmly. That is your money. Your future. My future is already secure, I insisted. I have a good job, my student loans are almost paid off, and I have savings. But more importantly, I want to reconnect with my real family, all of you, and with my biological mother. This money, it feels tainted now. Using it to help the family that truly wanted me feels right. Elena was openly crying now. Nina, we cannot accept such a gift. It's not a gift, I said. It's a recognition of what should have been. And practically speaking, I thought it could help with the bakery. Manuel mentioned you've been wanting to expand, maybe open a second location. Antonio leaned forward, his business mind clearly engaged despite his emotion. We have been looking at a property in West Philly. The numbers are tight, but with additional capital. Antonio, Elena scolded, we cannot take Jesse's money. Actually, I said, smiling now, I was hoping it might be an investment rather than a gift. I don't know the first thing about baking, but I am an architect. If you're looking to expand, I could help with the design of the new space. Make it a true family business. The conversation exploded then, everyone talking at once. The idea of me investing in the bakery, of becoming part of the family business in some way, seemed to bridge the emotional and practical concerns. By the time we moved to coffee, the broad strokes of a plan had been sketched out. I would invest the money in the bakery's expansion, with a small ownership stake and an agreement that I would help design the new space. It felt right in a way that nothing had felt right since Lauren's fateful toast. The money that the Parkers had intended to sever me from their family would instead bind me more closely to my true family. As the evening wound down, Carmen pulled me aside. Have you called Maria yet? I shook my head. Not yet. I'm still processing everything. She would be so happy to hear from you, Carmen said gently. She has carried the pain of giving you up for 34 years. It nearly destroyed her. Did she ever try to find me? Carmen nodded. Many times. But the adoption was closed, and she had signed away her rights. The system is designed to keep birth parents and adoptees apart unless both actively seek reunion. I'll call her, I promised. Tomorrow, before I head back to Connecticut. Carmen squeezed my hand. When you do, tell her that her daughter grew up to be an incredible woman. Strong, generous, and kind. She should be very proud. The next morning, I sat on the edge of my hotel bed, staring at my phone and the slip of paper with Maria's number. It was early, just past 7, but I knew if I waited any longer, I might lose my nerve. Before I could overthink it further, I dialed the number. The phone rang 3 times before a warm, slightly husky voice answered. "Hello." "Hello," I said, my own voice barely above a whisper. "Is this Maria Reyes?" "Yes, this is Maria," the voice confirmed. "Who's calling?" "My name is Jessica. Jessica Parker. I think I'm your daughter." There was a sharp intake of breath, then silence. For a moment, I feared she had hung up. "Maria? Are you there?" "Yes," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I'm here. Jessica? My Jessica." "Yes," I confirmed, tears beginning to stream down my face. "I found the Reyes family. They gave me your number." "Oh my God," Maria said, and I could hear that she was crying too. "I can't believe it. After all these years. How are you? Are you okay? Were you happy?" The simple questions broke something open inside me. "I was happy," I said. "The Parkers, they took good care of me. But they never told me I was adopted. I just found out a few days ago." "They never told you?" Maria sounded shocked. "But they promised. When the adoption was finalized, they promised they would tell you when you were old enough to understand." "Well, they didn't," I said. "I found out because their biological daughter made a toast about being the only child in their will." "Oh, Jessica," Maria said softly. "I'm so sorry. That must have been terrible for you." We talked for nearly 2 hours. Maria told me about her life, her struggle with depression and addiction after giving me up, her eventual recovery, and her current work as a counselor helping other women with similar struggles. She had never married or had other children. The pain of losing me had been too great. "Not a day went by that I didn't think of you," she said. "Wonder where you were, what you were doing, if you were happy. I have a box of letters I wrote to you over the years. Letters I could never send. I'd like to read them someday," I said. "You will," she promised. "When you're ready." We made plans for me to visit her in Tucson the following month. Before we hung up, she said something that would stay with me forever. "Jessica, I want you to know that giving you up was the hardest thing I've ever done. I was 17, with no money, no support, no way to care for you properly. I thought I was giving you your best chance at a good life. But not a day has gone by that I haven't regretted it. Not because you didn't have a good life, I hope you did, but because I missed it. I missed you." "I understand," I said, and I was surprised to find that I did. "And I don't blame you. You were a child yourself. Thank you for finding me," she said, her voice breaking. "Thank you for giving me a second chance to be in your life, even if it's not as your mother." "You're my mother," I corrected gently. "My biological mother. And I want to know you if you'll let me." After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time, letting the tears flow freely. They weren't tears of sadness exactly, but of release. The release of 34 years of not knowing, of believing I'd been unwanted, of having a piece of myself missing. When I returned to Connecticut that evening, Ryan was waiting at my apartment with takeout and a sympathetic ear. I told him everything about the Reyes family dinner, my decision to invest the trust money in their bakery expansion, and my emotional phone call with Maria. "So you're really doing it?" he asked. "Investing in a bakery in Philadelphia." "I am," I confirmed. "It feels right, Ryan. For the first time since I found out about the adoption, something feels completely right." "And the Parkers? What are you going to do about them?" I sighed. "I don't know yet. I'm still too angry to face them. But eventually, I think I'll have to. At least to let them know that their plan backfired. They tried to erase my past and buy me off, but instead they pushed me straight into the arms of my real family." The following weekend, a certified letter arrived from Hargrove and Associates, confirming the closure of my trust and the final distribution. Attached was a handwritten note from Lauren. "I'm sorry about the toast. It was cruel and I was drunk. But maybe it's for the best that you know the truth now. Take the money and start fresh. L." Her non-apology apology only strengthened my resolve. The money, all $50,000, was transferred directly to the business account for the Reyes family bakery expansion. Manuel and Elena tried once more to refuse it, but I was adamant. This wasn't charity, it was an investment in my newfound family and in my own future. 1 month later, I took a week of vacation and flew to Tucson to meet Maria in person. The moment I saw her waiting at the airport, her dark hair streaked with silver, her eyes, my eyes, wide with anticipation, I knew I had made the right decision. We fell into each other's arms like we'd been doing it our whole lives, both of us crying openly as travelers streamed around us. The week was intense, emotional, and healing. Maria showed me the box of letters she'd written to me over the years, hundreds of them, chronicling her life and her enduring love for the daughter she had given up. She introduced me to her friends, her colleagues, her life. And she listened, really listened, as I told her about my life, my work, my hopes and dreams. On my last night in Tucson, Maria gave me a small package wrapped in tissue paper. Inside was a delicate silver locket. "I bought this when I was pregnant with you," she explained, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I wore it every day until you were born. Inside is a tiny lock of your baby hair that the nurse cut for me before they took you away. It's all I had of you for 34 years. I opened the locket with trembling hands. Inside was indeed a tiny curl of dark hair, preserved like a precious relic. "I want you to have it," Maria said. "To remember that you were always loved, always wanted. Circumstances separated us, but love never disappeared." 3 months later, I stood beside Manuel, Elena, and their entire extended family at the grand opening of the second location of the Reyes family bakery. The space, which I had helped design, featured an expanded kitchen, a cozy cafe area, and a small gallery space where local artists could display their work. Above the entrance, a new sign read Reyes and Parker Family Bakery, Manuel's suggestion, his way of acknowledging that I was now part of their family business and their lives. Maria flew in for the opening, and for the first time, all the pieces of my fractured identity were in the same room. The family who had briefly raised me, the mother who had birthed me, and the architect I had become despite it all. As for the Parkers, I eventually did meet with them, 6 months after Lauren's fateful toast. I told them about finding the Reyes family, about meeting Maria, about investing the trust money in the bakery. I told them how their attempt to erase my past had instead led me directly back to it. And I told them that while I would always be grateful for the life they had given me, I could never forgive the lies. "But we loved you," Margaret protested, tears streaming down her face. "We always loved you as our own." "If you had loved me as your own," I replied quietly, "I would have been in your will alongside Lauren." "Blood isn't everything, Margaret. You taught me that lesson in the harshest possible way." Lauren wasn't present for that meeting. According to David, she had moved to Boston for a job opportunity, but I suspected she was simply avoiding the consequences of her actions. I never sought her out to confront her, but I did send her a gift basket of pastries from the new Reyes and Parker family bakery, with a note that simply read, "Thank you for the toast." It led me home. Today, 2 years after that fateful dinner, my life looks completely different than I ever imagined it would. I split my time between Connecticut, where I still work as an architect, and Philadelphia, where I help with the family bakery on weekends. I visit Maria in Tucson every few months, and she comes east to see me just as often. The Reyes family has embraced me completely, including me in holidays, celebrations, and the everyday rhythms of family life. And the money, that $50,000 that was meant to be my severance package from the Parker family, has multiplied. The second bakery location has been so successful that we're now considering a third, perhaps in New York where Miguel lives. What was intended to cut me off from one family has instead bound me more tightly to another. So if you're wondering why I gave $50,000 to the family who raised me, the Reyes family, not the Parkers, the answer is simple. Because they're my real family. Not by blood, not by law, but by choice and by love. And in the end, that's what family truly means. I hope my story resonates with some of you out there who might be questioning your own identity or family connections. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything? Or found unexpected connections that helped you feel whole? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey with me, please hit that like button, Subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that family is what we make it, not just what we're born into. Thank you for listening to my story of betrayal, discovery, and, ultimately, finding where I truly belong. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most painful revelations can lead us exactly where we need to go.